Hi guys! Now that we talked about the elements and principles of designs, it's time to get started on designing your nameplates. I went ahead and sketched 3 of those, and that's what you'll be doing. I'll show you quickly right after how I did them. And once you have all 3 done, you're going to choose the top designs that you really like, and you'll be tracing it over to a watercolor paper. So here is my example. Things to remember when you're sketching this over is, well, you could use a light table if you have one at home. If not, you should be able to use your window during daylight. You're going to place your design onto the window, and then you're going to put your watercolor paper on top. Watercolor papers are heavier, so you can't really see them without light, but if the light is coming from the back, you should be able to see them. I recommend to use a light color pencil crayon to sketch it down. Don't use black pencil because it'll smudge and it makes it a little messy. Another thing to remember is that don't apply all the details. Just have a very rough outline as a guide for you, and then you will be doing all the details with your actual coloring. So here's a quick comparison. So here is the actual sketch. But when you look at the actual final project, I only have a rough outline, right? So I left all the details, all the words, everything for the time that I'm actually working with my paint. And once you have that ready, it's time to paint, and I'm just gonna continue this demo. I'm gonna record it. I probably don't speak much after this point. Just watch what I'll do, and you could send me your questions during our class. Let's get it started. Alright, now that we have everything sketched down and ready to paint, let's quickly take a look at your options for paint before we get started. I have a few different types of paint here at my studio, which I'll be showing you, and we're gonna compare their density, how they're gonna react on your paper. And if you don't have any paint available, it's okay, and you could still complete this assignment in black and white using black Sharpie. And let's take a look at all these paints. As for the paint, you have the option of getting any liquid paints at dollar store or Michael's or Walmart. They all carry these. There are a few different brands, but the main thing about them is that they're all in liquid form. So some of them are more dense than the other. Deco Art, as far as I know, they are a little heavier and they're more opaque. And this other brand, it's from Dollar Store. It's called Acrylic. like they finished the name with a different spelling. It's more like liquid. So that is pretty liquidify. So it is very transparent, right? And then you also have like Craft Smart, and they're not expensive at all. You're gonna need your 3 primary colors, black and white, and you should be able to mix anything in between. Then you also have the option of getting a little more expensive items like this Basics by Liquitex. So these are a little heavier and denser. They still have the capacity to go translucent when you add water to them, but they are not, they actually last longer. They're not too expensive. I think they're around anywhere between $4 to $6. When they first came out, I remember I got them for $3.99, but recently I think I saw that they're around $5.50 or something like that. They come in all different colors, right? So you can get these at Michael's. And then you also, if you want to go really higher level into like more professional level, you could look at Windsor & Newton. This is also kind of more like a cream. They're not that liquid, they're opaque. But I mean, they are different colors, they have different opacity. Some of them are pretty opaque and dense, and some of them are more translucent. So when you're going to get them, you just want to read the label and see exactly their qualities. Before we actually get started on actual work, I want to quickly compare this for you so you have an understanding. If you haven't get your paint yet, it's a good idea to have some kind of ideas. I am just putting some right there on my paper. You will be mixing them on your painting palette or in a disposable plate. But I just want to show you the density right now. Actually, before I get started, quickly talking about the brushes. In your supply list, I included some of the smaller sizes and some of the medium sizes for you. You don't need to have big brushes like these guys. These are good or you would need them if you're doing a large painting. You're not. At this point, everything is a small size, so you don't really require them. But these are good to show you because they're kind of large, and I can talk about it a little. Usually brushes are there are different types, like we have all kinds of brushes, but the 2 main types that people use are flat brushes like that. So the tip is pretty flat, and you'll be able to get really nice straight line with them as you paint. And then you also have the round brushes. And these are softer, and then you could shape more organic forms with them, rather than, say, if you're doing architectural painting, if you have a building, you need to have a straight line. This serves you much better. But if you're doing a flower or an animal, this would be much nicer, right? So that's just a general idea. You need to have some really small brush sizes like that. This is a 00. I wrote all the numbers for you in the handout. So you're gonna need that because sometimes you need to do the detailing, and you need also like a medium size brush, round and flat, to fill out the bigger spaces. So that's a quick overview of that. Now let's take a look at this paint. So this is Craft Smart acrylic paint from dollar store. They also have this at Michael's. As you can see, it's pretty liquid. I didn't add any water to it, but it kind of has some opacity, but also it is also transparent, so it's not so thick, right? Now, if you add water to this, I'm just gonna grab my water here. If I add water to it, it has the quality to become transparent. As you can see, the more water you add, the more transparent it gets. And something really nice about acrylic paint is that you could do layers. You could create a layer, let it dry, come back to it, and it dries fairly quickly. You can come back to it and do another layer to create different shades or different colors even. Like you could use a different color, another thin layer over top of this when it's dry, and then you get your second color or third color actually happening in between. This other one, acrylic. This is also from dollar store. This is pretty translucent actually. I'm gonna wash my brush quickly here. And make sure when you're washing your brush, maybe I quickly show you, to protect your brushes, you're going to put the brush against the wall and go side to side, right? Never push down and open it because you will damage your brush. Okay, and get rid of all the excess water. That way you don't have, you see the paint is coming off here, so you want to make sure it's all clear before you move to your next paint. In this case it doesn't really matter much because I'm just quickly playing with paints to show you. Look how translucent this paint is. It's a nice quality, but if you're planning to do something more opaque, these are not gonna be your best choice, right? And then we also have, let's take a look at a different color here. This is Basics by Liquitex. So these are a little heavier paint. I'll just put some down there. As you can see, it's really creamy, right? So if you are planning to do more textured surface, these are your best choice, right? I'm actually going over that one. I'm having fun with that color right now. You could mix them, but really my purpose of this quick demo is to show you how they're different in terms of opacity and the heaviness, the physical heaviness of the actual paint, right? I'm not really painting anything specific, just playing with the paint. You also have the professional level that I'll show you in a second. Let me get this all rounded out. There you go. Well, that's something. Let's quickly take a look at our next paint. This is Windsor and Newton. These are pretty good. I have been using these brands. The first time I got exposure to them was through my watercolor. That was my first medium I ever used as a fashion illustrator. And I still actually have that watercolor. I'll show that to you in a second because some of you might have access to watercolor, and that's okay. You could use them for this assignment. Now this is also heavy. As you can see, it has a body to it. It's more like a cream, right? So you could apply it really thick, or you could also add water and make it translucent like that. So these are all of your options, right? Whatever you have available, you're okay to use. If you are planning to go buy some and you don't know what to do, I guess these are what I'm recommending. You could also ask me during our class time. Okay, but one last thing before we move on. I just wanted to start the actual painting, but I remembered I want to talk about the watercolor. So the watercolor, you could use any watercolor that you have, but they are also good medium to use for this assignment. You can add a lot of pigment as I just did here, so you have a lot of pigments and it's pretty dense, but I can also add more water and make it lighter. So essentially you don't need a lot of watercolor to complete your work. You just need, that was just one little dip there, right? And you see how far it's going. You could, we get into all of these details later, but you could do like wet and wet and create different shadows as you go based on your projects, so on and so forth. So just letting you know, you have all of these options. You could also, if you don't have any of these at home, you could also use a colored pencil. Colored pencil are okay, or markers, whatever you have, that's fine. You're just getting it started. So here's my watercolor, my colored pencil. If you're doing colored pencil, you don't need to do this on watercolor paper. You could just do that on regular paper. That would be all right. Okay, now let's move on to actual painting. Before you start painting your final piece, you need to tape it down to your sketchboard or onto your table. And you would not remove these tapes until it's all the way dry. Acrylic paint dries fairly quickly, right? If you're doing either acrylic or watercolor paint, I would say let it sit for at least 4-6 hours or so. I mean, if you're not in a rush, just take it off tomorrow. Like, I would not remove it. Usually when I do this type of painting, I don't remove it from the board for a day. Main reason, I just want to quickly go over that, because when you add water, your paper tends to curl up. And if you don't tape it down, you end up with a curly, uneven, warped paper. Like this demo that I just finished, I didn't tape it, but you can see how, if I actually hold it this way, you might be able to see it better. It's not all flat, so it's kind of uneven. But if you tape it down and let it dry, after it dries and remove it, it's going to be flat and beautiful. So you would have no trouble there. So this is my quick sketch, and I kind of marked my corners. I didn't really draw them. I'm gonna quickly draw them and start painting. Before I get there, another thing actually you should know is, let's quickly take a look at our sketches. So here are the 3 sketches. This is the one I chose to do based on the words I wrote on the first page. I like flowers, nature, music. So, and then that's my name. So that's the one I chose. It has some orchids on this side, a butterfly, the music sign. I turned it to I. My name is Perry, and I at the end. I kind of converted that. And the words that are representing me are written here. But before I actually start painting it, I want to take a moment and think about the colors. What are my options? I can choose to create contrast, so I could make everything in the background in some kind of similar harmonious color and use an opposite color or complementary color for the actual name. Or I could have that kind of emerge into the background. Think about all of those. And what I usually do, I kind of start putting some of those paints side by side on my sketch, and that would help me to kind of visualize what will happen. If I'm doing like a serious work, I actually make a few copies of that and I just apply the paint all over really lightly to get an idea. I sketch my colors, and once I'm happy with one, that's the one I'm gonna do, and then really firmly I know exactly what color is gonna be here, right? So those are some little tips I thought I will share with you.